Kairos. I was startled by Kairos' voice as I stepped forward. The puppy raised his head sternly. Ahem. Yes, it's me, Kairos, PFFT. I couldn't help but laugh. His attempt to look serious was both cute and funny. I was laughing out loud, but Kairos continued to speak. I've gained a lot of power lately, so I was able to manifest myself. Of course, it takes a lot of energy to appear in my true form, so I had to borrow a more friendly appearance for humans. How do you like it? Can you feel my dignity? The puppy Kairos puffed out his fluffy chest as he said that. He looked nothing but adorable. He seemed very proud of himself for accumulating enough power to manifest himself. I could feel his excitement. I stroked his chest fur and tried to suppress my laughter. Yes, you are very dignified. Right. Of course. It was very hard to hold back my laughter, but I did my best. But how long can you maintain this appearance? It's just a superficial disguise, so it doesn't consume much energy. I can keep it for a few hours. Then please manifest yourself more often in this form, because you're cute. I swallowed the last part and rubbed Kairos' head. The soft fur felt good on my fingers. Ah, this is healing. As I rubbed his head and moved down to his back, Kairos showed me his belly. Then I saw his pink belly and pink paws. Thump, this is totally cute. Cute things are the best. Puppies are saving the world. Yes, yes, scratch me more there. I did as Kairos asked and scratched his belly. He looked satisfied with his eyes closed. That's when I felt someone's presence. Master, what are you doing here? Zane came over, scratching the back of his head. I glanced at him and then looked back at Kairos. Taking a walk. Is that a dog or is it a wolf cub? What is that thing? As Zane approached, Kairos got up quickly. He shook his body and glared at Zane with displeasure. Wow, it's really cute up close. Zane crouched down like me and reached out to touch Kairos, but I grabbed his wrist. No, don't touch him carelessly. Why? You touched him too. This guy, this dog, no, this person is Kairos. Zane's face turned pale. What? I repeated myself. He's Kairos' manifestation. At that, Zane's eyebrows furrowed. He looked at me with concern. Master, are you very tired? I could feel his sincerity in his eyes. This kid. That's when Kairos stood up on his two legs with a solemn face. That's right. I am Kairos, kid. Zane and I opened our mouths at the same time. Is that true? Zane asked that, and that's bad for your kneecaps. I quickly reached out and made Kairos stand on 4 legs. He grumbled. I'm fine, kid. This body is just a borrowed appearance. It doesn't affect my real self at all. I'm glad to hear that, but having watched a lot of puppy videos on YouTube in my previous life, I was worried without thinking. Yes, yes, you're a good child. You were worried about me, right? Kairos put his small front paw on my knee. He looked like a lively creature. The difference between Kairos' real form and his puppy form was so big that I found puppy Kairos very cute, even though his voice was the same in either form. Hoo-ha, master, is this real? I nodded seriously at Zane, who still couldn't believe it. Hoo-ha. Zane collapsed on the floor with a strange groan. Lord Kairos, you've manifested yourself. Lo, Lord Kairos. As I entered the temple building with Kairos in my arms, the kids ran out as if they sensed Kairos' presence. All 3 kids greeted Kairos with sparkling eyes. Even Sasha, who was usually indifferent to anything, looked excited. They were so cute. Yes, my children. Kairos jumped out of my arms and ran around among the kids. Whoa, Lord Kairos, I missed you. You're so cute. The combination of kids and puppies was really the best. I smiled warmly when Zane whispered to me quietly, "So that puppy is really Cairo's manifestation. How many times do I have to tell you? Wow, it was true." Zane repeated himself and wiped his face. This kid, he couldn't believe it even after seeing it with his own eyes. He blinked his eyes and muttered something more. "I'm glad I joined this side. This side has a real God." He added, "It'll be different if it's a real God." He seemed to be calculating something in his head in a short time. That's when a translucent system window popped up. "Your loyal servant Zane has become a follower of Cairo's." What? Wow, what's going on? He became a believer by himself. I thought it would take more time. He must have tried everything to find someone who shared his intentions before he came to me. Of course, he's tied to me now, but he must have been convinced by seeing Cairo's real manifestation and calculated the outcome. But the message also says loyal servant. Maybe it's because of the contract. What was different from the original display was that Zane was my close aide. That's interesting. I closed the system window and looked back at Kairos and the kids. I saw a strange sight. "Hello, Lord Kairos." Zane knelt in front of Kairos and introduced himself politely. Then Kairos, who had been running around among the kids, approached Zane with a solemn face. "Yes, I know, kid. I also know that you helped my child with various things." Wow! Zane was amazed by Kairo's words. Zane's cheeks reddened a bit at Kairo's praise. Was he always like this? Come to think of it, he was like this in the original too. It was then that Kairos, the puppy, floated in the air. He stopped at Zane's face level. Zane's mouth opened wide at the sight of the levitating puppy. "I'll give you a gift for always helping my children." As Kairos said that, his pink paw touched Zane's forehead. Then, a pure white light flowed from Kairos to Zane. Could it be? Thank you, Lord Kairos. Zane was very happy. Kairos smiled smugly and said, "Ahem." I also smiled along with the children. I didn't expect it to happen so soon. What a windfall. In the original, Zane was one of the companions who accompanied Tertius, a so-called growth character. At first, he was just an information broker, a very cunning and money-crazed archer who wasn't that strong. But later, as he came to trust Kairos, he received power from Kairos and became one of the forces that strongly supported Tertius. Although Kairos' power was weaker than in the original, Zane must have become stronger than before. Ah, this is an unexpected achievement, isn't it? I didn't expect Zane to trust Kairos so soon. I was very pleased with the faster pace than the original. I can set him in motion more in the future. I grinned as I watched Zane nodding his head to Kairos. It was dawn before the sun rose. The clear air of dawn filled my lungs and made me feel refreshed. Today was the day we left for Vian Mountain, but I was warming up behind the temple, doing morning exercises in a spacious area where few believers showed up had become a routine ever since I came to the temple. Even if I left the mansion, I couldn't slack off on physical training. Sure enough, my body feels lighter after curing Malone's disease. I increased my exercise amount compared to before when Fanatic had shown me what to do. Of course, There was a limit to doing it alone, so sometimes Chester helped me with my posture. Today is lower body day, so I did some warm-up. Oh, Brother Revilov, just before I started my lower body exercise, I saw Cyril running towards me. Cyril had been commuting to the temple even after becoming an official priest. Of course, there was a dormitory in the temple for Cyril's convenience. Cyril was helping his parents shop while working as a priest. Hello, Priest Cyril. I wasn't wearing glasses right now, so I wasn't the leader but Revilov. You're up early. Are you feeling okay? Cyril asked me with a bright face. Yes, I'm fine. By the way, I heard you're leaving today. Ah, yes. I had agreed with the leader that we were leaving for evangelism while I was away at Vian Mountain. Just in case, be careful on your way. Thank you. Cyril smiled brightly and moved away from me. He's so nice. He didn't even envy or resent Revilov, who was leaving with the leader. He had a true priest-like attitude. Russell tilde thud. As I watched Cyril's back getting further, something jumped down from the tree next to me. It was Kairos the puppy. He's trustworthy. He's a kind and pure child by nature. Kairos had been in puppy form since yesterday. He looked cute, and it was comfortable not hearing his voice in my head. That's good. Shouldn't we get ready soon? Yeah, we should. I can't skip lower body day, so I did as much exercise as possible and then got up. Who am? Good morning, master. Before the sun fully rose, I met Zane in a back alley. Believers were visiting the temple early in the morning, so we changed our meeting place secretly. We had already said goodbye to the children separately anyway, so we escaped over the wall of the temple. I also wore a hood over my robe to hide my appearance. Did you sleep well last night? Zane looked half asleep, unlike me who slept well. Come to think of it, his shop was open at night. Go to sleep while we're on the way. Yes, I should do that. With yawns, Zane walked toward the carriage he had prepared in advance. He talked to the coachman for a while and then gestured to me. We planned to leave the territory by riding on a carriage that Zane had secretly prepared. No one in the temple knew that we were leaving except for those involved. The children stayed behind to manage the temple. Anyway, we could still keep in touch, and if I was in danger, the children would come over through the dimensional space, so it was fine. Get on. Hoam. I got on the carriage with Zane. It wasn't a very good carriage compared to Holden's, but it wasn't too bad either. Hiya, Jane, who sat across from me, kept yawning. I took off the hood I was wearing and looked at him. It will take about 3 days to get to Vian, where Vian Mountain is located. Zane stretched and reported, however, there is a limit to going by this carriage. Halfway through, we will take a break in Veers, and then we will move by horse from then on. It was roughly the route I expected. Okay, I got it. Get some sleep. As soon as I nodded my head, Zane's eyes drooped. Okay, master, you should rest too. He closed his eyes and soon started snoring. Veers. I wanted to skip it if I could, but I had no choice. I closed my eyes like Zane. The carriage moved without stopping. We only paused briefly for some rest along the way, but otherwise we traveled for a whole day. And then, deep in the night, the carriage stopped in the forest. It looks like we'll have to camp here tonight, Zane said after talking to the coachman. I readily nodded. It was time for both the horses and the people to get exhausted. I stretched my weary body and did some light exercises. Zane also followed me and relaxed his muscles. Meanwhile, as we were relaxing, the coachman started to prepare for camping. He skillfully laid out a cloth and set up a support. It seemed that Zane had already arranged this part in advance. We lit a fire and had a simple meal with some dried meat that we brought with us. "I'm going for a walk," I told Zane. He looked like he wanted to follow me, but I gestured to him to stay. As I entered the forest, I felt the clear air of the woods. It didn't have as many trees as Cartel Forest, but it felt like being in nature. I walked for a while, feeling the cool night breeze. Then, a white light appeared in front of me and Kairos manifested as a puppy. "The air is nice here." He sniffed with his small nose and wagged his tail like a real puppy. I smiled at the sight. Kairos had disappeared as soon as he found out that we would be traveling by carriage, and now he showed up again. "But my child." He licked his nose and constantly sniffed and then suddenly changed his tone. "What is it?" "It seems like there is a faint smell of monsters here." "Really?" "Yes, over there." Kairos started to run with his short legs. Damn it, I'm tired. I had no choice but to chase after him. He was quite fast while being in his puppy form. Fortunately, Kairos noticed I fell behind and stopped. He checked if I was following him and moved on. How long did we run? A cliff appeared. Kairos was standing at the edge, over there. I carefully stood next to Kairos and saw a village in the distance. That was Bayers, the stopover we would arrive at tomorrow. "There is a smell of monsters from there." I narrowed my eyes at Kairos' words. I wanted to ignore it if possible, but I guess I couldn't. I woke up early in the morning. The coachman who got up woke up Zane first, and we quickly packed up. As we got on the carriage, Zane yawned as if his mouth would tear. "Sleep some more. We still have a long way to go." "Thank you, master." Zane smiled and closed his eyes. I turned my gaze outside the window. Because the road to Bayers was not well maintained, the carriage uncomfortably shook a lot. Zane woke up and eventually gave up on trying to sleep every time it happened. 30 minutes after the carriage started moving, Bayers came into view. I looked up towards the sky. It was dark, as if it would rain any moment. "It's going to pour soon, isn't it?" Zane muttered as he also looked towards the sky. "I guess so." I answered briefly and turned my gaze to Bayers. Bayers was a village as big as Ellen. It was quite large, but it was more similar to a countryside, with no special features. The population was not very high either, and the location was also in a remote place, so unless you went to Bayonne, you wouldn't stop by this village. Moreover, Bayonne was also a small village with few visitors. Anyway, there was only one thing that stood out in Bayers: a castle that towered among the small buildings. "That's the villa of Baron.There. I heard that Baron.Dreher's grandson is staying there for recuperation." Zane explained on his own as he noticed my gaze. It was a story I already knew, but I nodded along. "I heard that he's quite handsome. His skin is not just pale, but almost white." "Really?" "Yes. I don't understand what's so good about being so white." Zane grumbled as we entered Bayers. "Knock, knock." I handed the gatekeeper a forged identity card that Zane had prepared in advance. He quickly checked our faces and turned away. From now on, we were just travelers. "Thank you." I got off the carriage and gave a tip to the coachman. He smiled happily and left, leaving Zane and me alone. Shall we look for a place to stay first? Let's do that. As we entered the inner part of Bayers, we felt people's eyes on us. They seemed to be busy with their own affairs, but they were clearly glancing at us. I heard that the people here don't like outsiders very much. There aren't many outsiders to begin with. Zane whispered to me, do you think that's just dislike? I whispered back. Zane frowned. What do you mean? Look at their eyes. At my words, Zane quickly scanned the villager's gaze. Zane couldn't finish his sentence. He had no choice. The people of Bayers looked at us as if we were sacrifices. I tried to ignore them as much as possible, but it was hard to do so now. Master, I smell a monster from that castle. I know. I moved cautiously, wary of the people. Zane followed me hastily. Master, should we just leave right away? I shook my head. Don't you think we need to rest for a day? We have to relax here and then go. That way we can move quickly when we arrive at Bayon. I know, but I feel uneasy. Their eyes are kind of weird. I know, but bear with it for a while. I walked with Zane to find an inn. Luckily, there was one nearby. We opened the door and entered. Inside, there were a few people drinking alcohol, and a middle-aged man with a warm expression was guarding the bar. Oh, welcome. The man, who looked like the innkeeper, greeted us with a forced smile. He looked sweaty, as if he had already heard our story. Are you two looking for an inn? I nodded and approached him. I took out a gold coin from my pocket and handed it to him. We're planning to stay for one night. I'll also ask for some food separately. Yes, I understand. The man smiled nervously and guided us. Come this way. Zane and I followed the innkeeper up the old stairs. Along the way, we still felt the eyes of the guests on us. Zane seemed to feel them too as he grabbed the hem of my robe. I tried to wink at him to reassure him, but unfortunately he didn't seem to get it. He kept sending me signals to leave, but our feet had already reached the second floor. Creak, creak. The old corridor made a strange noise every time we walked. It made it feel even more eerie. Bang! It was sudden. A loud noise came from right next to us. It was from the inside of a locked door that we were about to pass by. What? As Zane and I stopped, the innkeeper looked at us nervously. It's nothing. Nothing. There was a loud noise from a locked room. Zane questioned the innkeeper, who wiped the sweat from his forehead. It's my daughter, don't mind her. Your daughter? You locked your daughter in this room. Zane moved toward the door as if he was going to break the lock, but the man grabbed Zane's shoulder. I have no choice. My daughter is crazy. No matter what. Zane was furious, but I shook my head at him. Then the man let go of Zane and Zane backed off. The man's tour continued. Come over here. The place where the innkeeper stopped was in front of a room at the end of the corridor. Then have a good rest. I'll bring you some food soon. Our room was a small one with 2 single beds. Zane went straight to the bed and sat down. I closed the door and drew the curtains by the window. Then Zane looked at me with serious eyes. Master, don't you think that innkeeper is strange? How can he lock up his own daughter even if she's crazy? Lower your voice. I sat in front of Zane and put my finger on my lips. Zane closed his mouth and nodded. Anyway, it's too creepy. If I had known this, I would have just turned around and left without stopping by. We had to stock up on energy so it couldn't be helped. But the villagers' eyes are weird too. I nodded. Yeah, I know. How can you be so calm, master? Zane sighed heavily. I looked at him for a moment and opened my mouth. Do you know why there are few outsiders in this village? That's because there's nothing to see here and it's just a stopover to go to Bayon. And there's nothing to see in Bayon either. Besides that, what else? It was then that Zane seemed to remember something and widened his eyes. Soon after, his eyebrows furrowed. The missing cases. I forgot about them. They happened 10 years ago. As Zane said, there were several reasons why there were few outsiders in Bayers. But what I wanted to talk about was the missing cases that occurred 13 years ago. The cases that didn't discriminate between outsiders and villagers were so big that the Empire sent an investigation team. 20 people disappeared, one every week. However, there was no progress in the investigation. There were no witnesses or evidence. The only good thing was that there were no more victims after that. The investigation was closed, but there were no more missing cases after that, right? I nodded. Even if the cases were settled, the culprit wasn't caught. Naturally, the traffic of outsiders decreased. I see. Zane nodded as if he understood. And in my opinion, yes. I don't think the missing cases are over yet. What? Jane's eyes widened. I glanced outside through the curtains. Some villagers were looking this way. Master, what do you mean by that? Are you afraid of anything? What are you talking about all of a sudden? Nothing, though. No, I'm actually quite scared. I'm ashamed to say it, but I'm afraid of ghosts or things like that, things that I can't see. Is that so? Don't you have anything to fear, Master? I do too. What I feared was different from Zane. What is it? Something. What? You won't even tell me. Never mind that. Why are you asking this anyway? The eyes of the people of Bayers, the innkeeper's daughter who was locked up in the high castle. I smiled. Do you know what a vampire is? Vampires, the so-called bloodsuckers, the creatures of the night that feed on human blood. What is that? But Zane seemed to have never heard of the word before. Well, there was no such word as vampire in this world. Simply put, they are beings that use human blood as their nourishment. I see. Like mosquitoes, but why are you bringing that up? Why? Because there is a vampire in this city. Master. I swallowed the rest of my words and he called me again. You said you were afraid of beings that you can't see. Yes, I did. Then you're lucky. Vampires have a physical form. The quest in the village of Bayers within the game Saw was a sub-quest, just like the one in the cartel forest. The main quest of Saw was only to fight against Diego's faith and save the world. Sometimes there were stories about Rise's church, but most of them were also related to Diego's faith. Anyway, everything else was classified as a sub-quest. So I didn't have to clear the quest in Bayers village. The quest in Bayon was more important anyway. I didn't plan to do the Bayers quest either. Well, I did play it a few times in Saw, but when I saw it in reality, my thoughts changed a bit. Especially the innkeeper's daughter who was locked up in her room. That person, I had seen her in Saw too. Behind the small village of Bayon, there was a huge mountain called Bayon Mountain. Its height was so high that humans could not easily measure it, and there were many dangers everywhere. Among them were monsters that often appeared, such as orcs and goblins. Grrrr, kick. And now, the two races that had not invaded each other's territory before have collided. The orcs' blunt and hard weapons, along with the goblins' sharp spears, swung at each other incessantly. Puck, green blood splattered as orcs and goblins fell to the ground. Two people were watching that scene from the cliff next to them. Purple long hair fluttered in the wind. The long-haired man sat on the edge of the cliff and yawned repeatedly. The other one stood behind him and scanned the situation with emotionless eyes. This is boring. They're so stupid that their fights are also crude and worthless. The long-haired man, Khalid, muttered. It was then that he felt a new presence. Lord Tertius. One of his subordinates approached Tertius, who had been watching the situation with a blank face. It was Ron, who had a stiff impression. They're not around here either. Tertius' brows furrowed briefly and then relaxed. I see. Khalid watched him tilt his head back. What? They couldn't find it again? Yes. Seriously, your subordinates are so useless, aren't they? Khalid narrowed his eyes and jumped up from his seat. A treasure is supposed to be hard to find, but this is too much. There's no profit at all. Khalid's handsome face twisted. He soon passed by Tertius' side. I'm just going to go. Good luck, Third Lord. Khalid disappeared like the wind at a fast speed. Tertius stood still in his place. In fact, this was not something he had been ordered by anyone. He just came here because he felt like he had to for some reason. A hunch, if you will. You guys retreat. Tertius ordered Ron to withdraw. Yes. Ron and his subordinates, who had been quietly following behind him, withdrew without a word. They had seen Tertius' solo actions several times before. Tertius, who was left alone, glanced down at the cliff and jumped down. A sword came out of his waist at a fast speed. At the sound, the orcs and goblins looked at Tertius with surprised eyes. But it was already too late. The heads of the monsters flew into the air and hit the ground. Thud, thump. Tertius didn't even look at the corpses of the monsters and shook off the green blood on his sword. He moved his steps slowly to find the treasure. I was standing in the hallway. I didn't know how long I had been there, but I was just there. A dark hallway. I was not alone there. There were black shadows everywhere like silhouettes. They opened their mouths at me. Hey, you're an orphan, right? Jiang Jai Hayan. How dare you, you orphan bastard? The black shadows sneered at me. My dad said I shouldn't play with kids who don't have parents. You have no mom or dad. The people's murmurs grew louder, and the louder they got, the smaller I became. Maybe it was because I was so small. I felt suffocated. What did I do wrong to deserve this? All I want is but I couldn't say anything. I couldn't make a sound even if I wanted to argue. It felt like someone was choking my neck, making it hard to breathe. I just wanted to live a normal life like everyone else. Why do they all ignore me and oppress me? Why? What did I do wrong to them? Master, I opened my eyes wide. Master, are you okay? Then I saw a strange ceiling and Zane's face looking at me with concern. Ha ha, I finally breathed. I gasped for air and sat up. Oh right. This is the world inside H-Saw. It's not the world I used to live in. This is a different world that doesn't know me. Ha ha. I washed my face. Then I heard Zane's careful voice. You seem to have a nightmare, so I woke you up. Are you okay? Ah, thank you. I tried to smile at Zane. My expression didn't come out easily. I felt like I had been dreaming a lot lately. But the dream I had today was the worst. A dream of my previous life that I hadn't experienced since I came to this world. Are you all right, dear child? Your face is covered in sweat. Did you have a bad dream? Yes. I'm fine. Don't worry. Kairos, who had finished his manifestation and returned from a puppy to a spirit form, asked me with a worried voice. I told Kairos that I was fine too. Maybe it was because of the dream that I had. Earlier today, Zane asked me what I was afraid of. My fear and the root of that horror. Phew, what time is it? It's 2 in the morning. You should go back to sleep. Should I? As I thought about it, Zane put on his robe. He looked like he was going somewhere. What are you doing? Ah, well. Giant scratched his head and approached me timidly. Actually, I'm worried about the innkeeper's daughter. So you're going to free her or something? I just want to hear her story first. Even if she's crazy, it's not right to lock her up in there. I didn't care much about it either, but it wasn't humane to ignore it either. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Okay, let's go together then. I can't sleep anyway. Zane brightened up noticeably. Really? I nodded and he smiled with a squeak. I was scared to go alone. This is great. What a coward. My kids are so nice indeed. I heard Cairo's satisfied laughter and put on the robe that I had taken off. After putting on the hood, I followed Zane to the door. Zane stood in front of the door and carefully turned the knob. He peeked his head out into the hallway and quickly looked around before looking back at me. After confirming that I nodded, he cautiously moved his feet. As we entered the hallway, we realized that the inn was as quiet as a mouse. We were the only outsiders in this village, so we were probably the only guests too. Squeak, squeak. As Zane and I walked carefully down the hallway, there was a noise from the floor. It felt louder than when we heard it during the day. I was thinking that when Zane's eyes widened and he looked at me. What do you want? Squeak. I was just walking quietly, but the corridor was old and made noise. I shrugged my shoulders to convey that it was unavoidable. Zane glared at me once. This kid. Fortunately, we reached the locked room without running into anyone. Can you open it? I didn't have that skill, so I asked Zane quietly. He smiled slyly and took out something from his pocket. It was a long metal rod with irregular holes. I can open anything with this. A master key or something. Jane answered briefly and started poking the lock with the metal rod. It's a crime without a doubt. But there's a child trapped in there, so we have no choice. Yes, sometimes there are crimes that can be forgiven. The old lock made a few clanking sounds and then opened with a click. Wow, awesome. This guy has good hand skills. I was about to raise my thumb to Zane, who put the lock on the floor gently when it happened. Kid, someone is coming. Thanks to Kuro's voice, I noticed the sound of wood creaking from the stairs. Zane also heard it and looked at me with startled eyes. We have no choice. I gestured to Zane with my eyes and stepped back. Then I hid my body in a small space near the stairs. When I made a gesture to cover my mouth with my index finger, he nodded his head. Soon I heard someone climbing the last step. One person by the sound of their footsteps. We can easily subdue them. What are you do, thud? Before the man who discovered Zane could scream, I swiftly hit his neck. He lost consciousness without making a sound. I barely caught him before he hit the floor and laid him down. He was the innkeeper. Wow, master, you can do this kind of thing as well. Zane opened his mouth slightly in surprise. Well done, my boy. When did you get so strong? I rubbed my hand, which felt numb from the impact, and smiled faintly. I learned. I didn't just get pushed around by fanatic while doing physical training close to the limit. I also learned some simple restraint and self-defense techniques. I smiled at Zane, who showed me his thumb, and moved the innkeeper to the corner. Zane opened the door of the locked room. This trash. The inside was so dirty and narrow that it couldn't be called a room, but more like a storage. In a place full of dusty things, a child curled up and slept. It was a girl who looked like she was in her late teens. Her wrists were tied tightly with ropes. How dare they do such horrible things to this young child? They locked up such a young child. Kairos and Zane were furious. So was I. I already knew the situation, but seeing it in front of me made my fists clench hard. At that moment, the child's eyelids fluttered and her eyes opened. Who are you? The child who saw us was startled and tried to back away, but she couldn't go far because of her injured leg. Jane stepped forward to approach the child, but the child flinched. I grabbed Zane's shoulder and shook my head. Then, I crouched down a little distance away from the child and matched her eye level. I greeted her softly. "Hello, sorry for scaring you. I'm Leviathan. This is Zane, my servant." I introduced myself like that because I had been wearing the artifact glasses ever since I left the territory. Zane pouted his lips as if he was displeased, but I ignored him. "Are you outsiders?" The child's expression showed a slight decrease in wariness. I smiled and answered, "We came to this village a few hours ago, and by chance we heard that you were trapped here. You want to help me?" "Yes." The child stared at me blankly for a moment, then opened her mouth slightly. "Then please help me know our village. A subquest has occurred. Subquest Vampire Extermination content. You have to exterminate the vampire that rules Bayers and liberate Bayers. Goal: exterminate the vampire. Reward: failure. Do you accept?" Yes/no. The quest title is the same as in H-Saw. By the way, what is the reward? In H-Saw, the reward was only experience points. I did the quest a few times because the reward wasn't bad, but this time it wasn't about getting a reward. I pressed yes right away. If I finish this well, maybe I can turn the whole village of Bayers into believers of Kairos. Even if the population of this village was small, it was more than 300 people. Even if I can only make half of them as believers, it would still be a huge profit. "Don't worry." I spoke to the child with a businesslike smile. The child nodded her head. Now that the quest was accepted, it was time to do what I had to do. I winked at Zane and he understood my intention and approached the child. He untied the rope that bound the child's wrist. As Zane tried to help the child stand up, the child staggered. "I'm sorry, my leg hurts." "It's okay, lean on me." Zane supported the child and moved slowly. The two left the room and I stayed there for a while. I couldn't just leave it like that. "Hey, what are you doing alone?" I opened my inventory and took out a small glass bottle. Then, I activated my heal skill on it. A small and bright light seeped into the glass bottle. I had experimented with applying my heal skill in various ways while using it. This was the result. White-colored potion was created in the glass bottle. Yes, heal skill could be stored in the form of a potion, just like how mages store their magic in scrolls. Congratulations! The level of your skill heal has increased. Oh, did I already fill up the experience points? I didn't use the skill much, but I guess I used it up to 10 times already. Heal active LV. 2 grade legendary description. The effect increases proportionally to the skill level LV. 1 heals wounds and fatigue of living beings LV. 2 heals the minds of living beings LV 3. Locked LV 4. Locked LV 5. Locked experience points 0/20. By the way, the effect of level 2 is to heal the minds of living beings. That's not bad. No, wait, heal minds. This. No, I should hold back my excitement for now. Just in case. By the way, previously, the experience points needed to level up were 10, but now they are 20. That's too much of an increase. Oh, maybe it increases by 10 each time. Hopefully, it's not doubling every time. Wow, you're really good at applying your divine power. I heard Cairo's admiration as I walked out of the room. Heal was a skill, but it was based on applying my divine power, so I tried it out just in case. I didn't expect it to work so well, though. When I returned to the room, I saw Zane and the child sitting on each bed. I went to the tired-looking child and handed her the healing potion. "What is this? Drink it, you'll feel better." The child obediently took the potion and drank it. As she did, the wounds all over her body began to heal. She noticed the change and jumped up from her seat. "Huh, my leg doesn't hurt. Thank you." The child bowed her head to me. Zane poked my side. "Master, what did you give him?" "A high-grade potion. The only potion in this world that could heal wounds was the high-grade potion made by alchemists." So I casually said that, and Zane's eyes widened. "How much is that?" "Quiet, you're making her nervous." The child started to fidget because of the money grubber. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. I'll pay you back somehow." I shook my head. "It's okay, you don't have to pay me back, but..." The child's eyes trembled. I pretended to be nice and smiled. "I have a lot of money, so it's okay. I was staying in this cheap inn, but it was true. I'm sorry. I was surprised by him. He's telling the truth, so you don't have to pay him back." "What? Yes, all right." The child finally calmed down when I added my name. "What's your name?" "Yuri." So her name was Yuri. I didn't know her name until now, even though I was doing the vampire extermination quest. "Then, Yuri, why did your father lock you up?" She didn't seem to be insane. When I asked, Yuri's eyes became moist. I am a sacrifice." "What?" When I asked again as if I misheard, the child repeated, "I am a sacrifice." "A sacrifice? Does she mean human sacrifice?" Kairos was also shocked. "That son of a BTCH. I grabbed Zane's shoulder, who cursed in front of the child, and calmed him down. Calm down, but she said she's a sacrifice. We don't even know what kind of sacrifice she is. Maybe it's not really a human sacrifice." "It is a human sacrifice." I sighed softly. I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't. It was an infuriating story even when I saw it in the H-Saw. And now that I experienced it in reality, I was also angry, but I had to restrain myself from showing rage in front of the child. Yuri was still trembling. "Yuri, I'm sorry. You were scared, right?" I'm okay." As I comforted the child, Zane let out a big sigh. "Phew, Yuri. What the hell is going on here? Just what is this village?" Then Yuri spoke hesitantly. "Our village offers a sacrifice once a year. We have to." "Who do you offer the sacrifice to? And do you really do human sacrifice?" Yuri nodded and continued. In Bayers, they offered the most beautiful man and woman from the village as sacrifices once a year to their master, and this year Yuri was chosen as one of them. Yuri's father willingly gave his daughter as a sacrifice and locked her up in the room so she wouldn't run away. What kind of crazy thing is that? Zane exclaimed. Then, does this have anything to do with the missing case 13 years ago? Zane asked me with shaky eyes. Probably. It all started when it settled in this village 13 years ago. On the day of the incident, it kidnapped about 20 people in a short time to feed on human blood. But when the mass disappearance caused a stir, it gradually reduced the number. But the sacrifice is voluntary. Zane said with a puzzled face. It started with a disappearance, but now it's a sacrifice. How can that be? That's when it happened. Flash, the sky lit up. Soon after, rumble, the thunder roared. I turned my eyes to the window and whoosh, the rain started to pour down. Bang! The door opened roughly. 6 guards stormed into the inn. I, Zane, and Yuri were startled and jumped up from our seats. What do you want from us? Zane spat out in a defiant tone, hiding behind me. This kid, he clearly didn't sound scared, but he put me in front of him. I sighed involuntarily. Was Zane annoyed or just lazy? I was about to say something when the guard spoke harshly. Look at these brats. Max is unconscious and the sacrifice is missing. It's all because of them. The man who was standing in front of the others glared at us fiercely. Master, what should we do? Jason asked me quietly. No matter how big the guards were, they were just ordinary people. If we wanted to, we could shake them off easily. I locked eyes with the leader of the group. He was staring at me with malice, but then his lips curled up wickedly. Ho ho, look at that guy. He looks better than Sebastian, don't you think? Then the others also chimed in. Yeah, he does. Let's take him as this year's sacrifice. The men started to approach us. Kid, get away from them. Kairos called me urgently. I grabbed Zane, who was about to rush at them, and whispered, Wait, I have a plan. Soon after, the men roughly grabbed my body. Zane, Yuri, and I were dragged by the men. Our wrists were tied behind our backs with ropes. It was uncomfortable but bearable. Whoosh, as we were pulled out of the inn, the rain poured over us. The flesh stung and my eyes squinted involuntarily. Master, is this okay? Zane's voice came to me. Don't worry, but Zane couldn't continue. Move faster. Why are you so slow? The men pushed us along with insults. We arrived at a dark alley. There was a shabby carriage parked inside. The men threw us into the cargo compartment. We were pushed by their force, but we didn't fall. Yuri, are you okay? The carriage started to move and Zane opened his mouth. The rain was pouring down, so his voice wouldn't leak out of the compartment. But even when Zane called her carefully, Yuri didn't answer. Yuri's eyes were unfocused. Yuri. Zane called her again with a surprised look, but it was the same. Zane. Master, Yuri's condition is strange. Didn't you feel a little sting when it rained? He looked at me with a puzzled expression, but he still answered me. Yes, it didn't hurt, but it felt prickly, like being stabbed by a needle. This village rains often. It rains every few days, so people don't mind getting wet. So, Zane's eyes became serious. I looked at him and spoke slowly. But the rain in Bayers also started 13 years ago. Rumble, the thunder sounded in the distance. Warning, You have killed the 92nd child of Mashin, Shalom. Mashin might notice your existence. The system warned me, but it wasn't a big problem. According to the narrative of H-Saw, Shalom was treated no differently than a discarded child by Mashin. It would take years for Mashin to check on Shalom, who was out of his interest. After leaving the banquet hall, I entrusted Yuri to Zane. I had to check the system windows that had piled up. The next thing that followed the system's warning was the window that appeared as soon as I killed Shalom. Subquest Vampire Extermination cleared. Subquest reward will be given. You have acquired mission time Bears. I received a reward for clearing the subquest. Mission time. It was a name I had never seen in H-Saw. Even though I had acquired the reward, I had nothing in my hand, so I opened the inventory and checked. There was a new item in the shape of a white feather in the inventory. Mission time grade. Legendary item description. For 10 minutes, the residents of Bears will pay attention to you. The probability of those who pay attention to you becoming a follower of Cairo's faith increases by 50%. One-time item this is. Unconsciously, I widened my eyes. This item had the same effect as the event that occurred when I saved people from the underground prison of Rise's church. The so-called follower generator. I didn't expect the reward to be this. I would have regretted it if I had ignored Bayer's quest and moved on. Although the item itself was limited to a one-time use, it was a big deal. I was about to smile with satisfaction when Cairo's voice came to me. "My child, you were amazing. How did you think of such a way to defeat the monster?" "Right, that was me. Yes, yes. This is why I watch over my little bird. Honestly, it wasn't really all that cool. I just used the trick I did in H-Saw." Master. After checking the notifications, Zane, who was supporting Yuri with one arm, called me quietly. When I turned my eyes, he pointed at something with his hand. There were 6 figures at the end of the castle corridor. Their faces were familiar. They looked like zombies, with their joints twisted grotesquely as they glared at us. Thick saliva dripped from their open mouths, and their arms and legs were twisted. That wasn't all. Their whole bodies were dyed blue, and their eyes were bloodshot. They looked no different from the people affected by the happy drug that Rise's church had poisoned their followers with before. Those are the ones who dragged us here. I know. They were the ones who broke into the inn and made us kneel before Shalom. I stared at them and took out the holy relic mace from my inventory. Zane was surprised when I took out something from thin air, but I ignored him. I knew very well who they were who dragged us here. They were Shalom's closest aides. Mashin's power seeped more easily into humans whose nature was evil. Shalom's closest aides were the most evil among Bayer's people. They had no conscience or remorse. That's why they submitted deeply to Shalom and served by his side while offering their own townspeople as sacrifices, unlike other residents. Maybe being brainwashed also contributed to some extent, but still, they can't be forgiven. They were born close to evil. Even if they were left alone, they would easily commit murder or crimes that matched it. Of course, some of them had already done so. Anyway, when Shalom died, the brainwashing that had been cast on the village was all lifted. But since they had been affected by Shalom's power for a long time, they had absorbed his power up close, So even after Shalom disappeared, the brainwashing didn't end. And since they had received Mashin's power directly from Shalom, they became monsters when Shalom, who controlled them, disappeared. I can't cure them at my level yet. Purifying monsters is only possible in the later part of the story. In other words, they were now nothing but monsters that couldn't be helped. Grrr. The humans that had become monsters roared like beasts and ran towards us. Zane, take good care of Yuri. Don't worry about that and be careful yourself. His tone was blunt, but his words were full of concern. It made me laugh. I smiled and ran down the corridor. I swung my mace at the head of the monster that ran ahead. Puck. The mace in my hand drew a fast and sharp hit. I was able to move much lighter thanks to the cure of Maloney's disease and the training from Fanatic. The speed was also faster than when I faced the monsters in the crack before. Crack. The monster's head flew off as it hit the mace. The flying corpse with twisted joints was disgusting. I felt a bit of guilt because it looked like a human just a few hours ago. But they were no longer human. They were just evil monsters. Maybe it was because the blood they shed was a different color, or maybe it was because of the divine power that Kairos gave me. I was able to wash away the guilt faster than I thought. Krrr. After killing 2 monsters, another one ran at me with its mouth wide open, as if to bite and tear my neck. Its teeth and nails, which were so sharp that they couldn't be seen as human, were closer to a beast's. I dodged the 2 arms that flew at me by turning my body and hitting the monster's neck from behind. Puck, crack. The monster with a broken neck turned into dust and disappeared. You're doing well, my little bird. Swing harder. As I moved my body while listening to Kairo's enthusiastic cheering, there were only 3 enemies left. My body was lighter than before, but I couldn't help but breathe roughly. However, I couldn't stop now. At this moment, the remaining 3 monsters were trying to kill me. I tried to avoid their attacks by bending my waist. Tilde, Puck. A backup shot came. A faint but white arrow stuck in the monster's head. I glanced back and saw Zane holding Yuri with one arm and pulling the bowstring with his mouth, shooting arrows. Puck. The arrow with a faint white light killed another one of the monsters. That kid, he already knows how to use divine power. In the original work, he was indeed a promising character who was considerably significant. His speed was impressive. I smiled and killed the last monster with my mace. The blue and black liquid shed by the monsters stained my mace. I shook it off and headed for Zane and Yuri. Good job, Zane. Right. I think I'm pretty cool too. I feel like I've gotten stronger thanks to Kairo's power. I looked at him happily and then turned my eyes to Yuri. Yuri's expression was not good. Yuri, I'm sorry, you must have been scared. I asked carefully and Yuri swallowed her saliva and shook her head calmly. I was a bit scared, but I'm fine. She's mature. But you 2 saved me, right? And our village too, right? Thank you. I nodded and added, yes, as you know, there will be no more sacrifices in this village. Asterisk, 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 someone's coming out. What, really? As we approached the huge entrance of the castle, we heard voices from outside. Come to think of it, it was like this in the original work too. I pushed the entrance with my hand and went outside. For a moment I couldn't open my eyes because of the strong sunlight. Then when I opened my eyes, Yuri, those people are outsiders. Ho, how? The villagers who had been freed from Shalom's brainwashing were standing with their weapons in their hands, looking surprised. Their weapons were not all that impressive. Some of them had spears or swords, but many of them had household items like knives or frying pans. They had run out to save Yuri, who was trapped in the castle after the brainwashing was lifted. Ah, Dad. Yuri, who was supported by Zane, found her dad and ran towards him. Yuri's injured body had healed in the morning, and she had only passed out for a while before regaining consciousness, so she could easily hug her dad. Dad, Yuri, oh my child. The villagers' eyes were drawn to the two of them, and then they turned to us. What's going on? There must have been a monster in the castle. They didn't know what was going on and murmured. When Yuri got out of his dad's arms, she started to explain to the villagers. These two people defeated the monster in the castle. It's thanks to them that we don't hear that voice anymore. Clang, clang. The weapons fell from the villagers' hands as they heard Yuri's words. Is that true? Oh my, finally. Tears of joy and freedom flowed from the villagers' eyes. We're free finally. Among the happy people, Yuri's dad hugged his daughter and apologized endlessly. I'm sorry, my child. It's okay, Dad. It couldn't be helped because of that voice. A sob, thank you. Thank you so much. Yuri's dad looked at us with tears and thanked us. Thank you. You're our benefactors. Thank you. The villagers who realized the situation also thanked us. I looked at them and counted the number of villagers with a friendly smile. About 200 people at a glance. Surely the mission time I got would make Bayer's people pay attention to me. Then would the people who weren't here also pay attention? As I thought so, I reached to take out mission time from my inventory. At that moment, a feather popped out of my inventory. Whoosh tilde at the same time, a bright white light spread from the feather. It was a huge light that seemed to cover the whole village. I didn't miss the gap and touched the priest's robe in my inventory that was still open. Once again, the light that dyed the world faded away. The light had all flowed into my body, and after the light disappeared, I was wearing a priest's robe on my body, a whopping 30% increase in the chance of making someone a follower by using this robe. If HSaw's basic probability calculation system was correct, then adding 50% of the feather effect and 30% of the priest's robe effect would make the probability of these people becoming my followers 80%. I sincerely hoped it was 80% when more people came out of their houses. Maybe it was because of the item effect. They gathered in a hurry. The number was about the same as Bayer's total population. This should be considered a ready-made feast, right? I cleared my throat softly and straightened my back. Then Zane tilted his head at me and whispered in surprise. Master, what on earth did you do? Zane blurted out in a hurry. What was that light just now, and your clothes? When did you change them? That's a trade secret, but right now it's time for a mission. Zane narrowed his eyes slightly as if he didn't understand, but when I didn't say anything, he soon looked around and spotted something. He grabbed my arm and pulled me along. He led me to a high and flat rock that could fit one person. I quickly understood what he meant and climbed up on the rock. As soon as I did, the crowd became silent and their eyes were fixed on me. This is the effect of mission time. You must all be surprised by what happened. Who are you? The father of Yuri, who was holding his daughter tightly until a moment ago, asked me in a dazed voice. He must have been more shocked by the fact that I drove away the monster of the fortress, absorbed the white light into my body, and changed my clothes in an instant. Oh, right. I also changed my clothes during the flash of white light. I felt like I had become the protagonist of a transformation story for a moment. It was bitter, but now I had the attention of many people. I used my business smile. I'm sorry for the late introduction. I am Leviathan, the leader of the Kairos faith. It's a name that I never get used to no matter how many times I say it. Kairos faith. Is there such a religion? There are many religions in the world, so it's possible. The people murmured, but as soon as I opened my mouth again, they quieted down. The effect of mission time is really good. We are an emerging religion with our main branch in Roval, within Holden territory. And I came here after hearing from Kairos that the people of Bears were suffering from an evil being. There's nothing better than a hero who hears the voice of God to lure people. Yes, yes. It's because I sense the aura of the monsters. Kairos seemed happy that his name was praised and giggled. Well, this time it wasn't Kairos who directly asked me to come here, but it's still good. Seeing the people's slightly agape mouths, the hero who heard the voice of God's strategy was effective, as always. With the power that Kairos bestowed upon me, I drove away the evil monster that lived in this fortress. Unfortunately, I couldn't save some people who worshipped the evil monster and became monsters themselves because of it. I pretended to be sad and bowed my head slightly. Then Yuri, who had been watching me quietly, shouted out loud, "It's okay, leader. It couldn't be helped. Those people know those beings were monsters themselves, and you have not only saved me but also everyone in the village. I'm grateful to you." Yuri's words. The child who came out of the fortress with us gave a solid trust to the people. Thank you, Yuri. It was worth saving you, but I continued to act. No, I just did what I had to do. I just came here as Kairos led me. I smiled sadly and then said strongly, Kairos is always by your side. Even if you don't believe in him, he watches over everyone. That's how I was able to come here. Then, does Kairos grant salvation even to those who don't believe in him? A person standing in the middle of the crowd raised his hand and shouted. I nodded my head with a kind smile. Yes, Kairos is originally the Lord of this world who loves all living beings. He doesn't ask for much. Just faith and prayer toward him, these two things are enough. The people gasped and praised him. It was time to nail it down. Kairos will always be by your side and take care of you. There is no coercion or pain involved, just faith alone. I spread my arms toward the people and showed them. There is no restriction on believing in him. You don't have to visit the temple, just believe in him. We can all become the children of Kairos. I raised my arms towards the sky and closed my eyes. Kairos will always embrace us. He will take care of us and stay with us whenever we believe in him. I finished my speech and opened my eyes. At that moment, thunderous applause erupted. Wow, Kairos, leader Kairos, I believe you. Our savior, our light. All citizens of Bayers were moved by your words. All citizens of Bayers became believers of Cairo's faith. It must be working for sure. It was an 80% chance, so it's obvious that all these people became followers. Even my own self thought that the speech I had spoken wasn't perfect. Rather, it was lacking. But seeing all these people moved, the probability is like an additive. Thanks to the speech alone, everyone was moved, and I was lucky to avoid doing a wink. I smiled and opened the religious status. Total number of believers. 851. It's a number that makes my mouth curl upward. The last time I saw the number of believers, it was less than 500, but it jumped to 800 in one breath. I was proud. There wasn't much left to reach 1,000. Although there was no change in the percentage of the main quest, this was something. Oh, my little lamb, I feel my power rising. This is all thanks to me. You know that, right? So it would be nice if you gave me a holy relic when I'm in trouble. I swallowed the rest of my words and laughed like Cairo's child. Of course. It's because of you, my first child, that I'm getting stronger day by day. Thank you, my baby. Yes, yes, praise me more. When I felt my mouth not going down easily, I felt Zane's gaze looking at me. He whispered to me with a smug face, "No matter how I think about it, you should be a merchant." He looked annoying as he smiled, but I let it go generously because it was a happy moment. Asterisk, 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 later. Do you really have to go? Please, stay for at least one more day. We all want to treat you better. After the mission in front of the fortress, the people of Bayers were in a festive mood. Everyone came out to the street and shared food and drinks. Zane and I also joined them for a while and ate some food. But we couldn't waste any more time and got up from our seats. However, the people held us back, especially Yuri and Yuri's dad. We told them that we had a busy way to go and borrowed some horses. The people of Bayers gladly gave us the best horses they had. They said we didn't need to return them and that they had received more than what they had given us. As we were about to mount the horses, leader, Yuri and her dad tried to hold us back again. Behind them I saw the earnest faces of the people. Master. Zane also looked sorry for them, but we had no time. I'm sorry, I'll visit again soon, I said to the people with a troubled expression. They looked disappointed. Yuri bowed her head slightly with tears in her eyes. Please come back someday, leader. Yuri's dad hugged her shoulder. He also looked at us with moist eyes. You must be busy saving people like us, right? Yes, that's right. Actually, it was a matter of saving my own life. Yes, I understand, then I can't help it. But still, someday, I really want to see you again. I nodded to him and mounted the horse. Zane followed along and got on the horse. The people who filled the street moved aside. Riding a horse among the crowd of people, I felt like I had become a real hero. A strange feeling of exhilaration and pressure. Always stay healthy. As I carefully drove the horse, the people started to speak after Yuri's dad. Don't get hurt. Thank you, leader. May Kairos always be with you. Our light. Listening to the people's praises, Zane and I left Bayers. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. After leaving Bayers in the daytime, we rode our horses endlessly. Before we knew it, the sun had set and the deep night set in. We still had a long way to go, but we were exhausted from the day's accumulation of fatigue, so we stopped our horses in the forest. We have to camp out again. Zane tied the horse to a stake and sighed. We have no choice. I replied as I fed the horses some food. Then I felt Jane's gaze. He looked at me persistently, and when I turned my head, he stared at me with a strange look. How come you don't seem to mind at all? What do you mean? Usually nobles hate camping out like this. Well, let's say that's not the case, but you don't even hesitate to eat what commoners eat. There are many nobles who can't eat that. I shrugged my shoulders. I'm not a normal noble, am I? I joked, and Zane chuckled without meaning. That's right. You're not a normal noble. You're a very unusual person. He looked at me intently and moved his body to start a fire. I don't think it's that much. I took off my robe and laid it on the ground. I had taken off my priest's robe right after leaving Bayer's, so I just sat down casually. I took out some simple food that the believers from Bayer's had given us and handed it to Zane. You don't know how amazing you are. You've been like that since I first saw you. You said you would save Roval and bought mandrake heads then. You actually saved them. You built a temple in place of Rise's church. You also have amazing things with you, pulling things out of thin air, and you easily change your clothes. When I heard that, it must have looked amazing from Zane's perspective. That's why I mistook you for a mage at first. I see. He paused for a moment and his eyes narrowed slightly. He couldn't continue his words easily. After licking his lips a few times, he muttered softly, "Master, you must have used that power." I knew what power Zane was talking about, the power of healing. He had seen me use the heal skill on my body in Shalom's castle, so that's why he said that. Isn't that power something you shouldn't use carelessly? Of course, I won't tell anyone or anything like that. In the dark forest, where there was no one to hear us, Zane lowered his voice and spoke. I nodded. He was right. Currently, only the high-ranking officials of Diego faith could directly use the power of healing in the continent. The alchemist's healing potions had a similar effect, but they were a skill of mixing herbs, not a real healing power. The Diego faith knew this fact well, so they used this power to do various things, especially since they monopolized the power of healing. But the healing power of Diego faith is incomplete either. The healing power of Diego faith was not a perfect healing power. On the surface, it seemed to perfectly cure anyone, but there was a wicked god's energy in that power. Diego faith used this wicked god's energy to control people. Of course, the range of control varied depending on the amount of energy embedded inside the body. In any case, Diego faith's officials killed or dragged all those who were born with real healing power to Diego faith's headquarters and absorbed the power to be their own. Half of the high-ranking officials of Diego faith were such people. Of course, there were other healing powers, besides Diego faith's power in the original work. However, it was only the minority and not as much as Diego faith. Diego faith often fought to take away the healing power from Cairo's faith. Every time it happened, Tertius would stop them. The problem is that we are the minority right now. The situation was different from the original work. I was the only one who had the healing power in Cairo's faith. Fortunately, that fact was not known externally. If it became known that I had the real healing power, Diego faith would try to restrain, eliminate, or pull me to their side. It was a great fortune to discover that I could apply my power to potions. although it seemed to reduce the effect a little compared to using the healing skill directly. It would still be better than any alchemist's healing potion. It's good that I have a healing skill, but I was a little surprised at first because there was no healing skill in the original work. I gathered my thoughts and opened my mouth. Don't worry about that. I'm aware of it. Still, don't use it in front of people. Zane looked sincerely worried. As if to reassure him, I smiled at him and then took out a small glass bottle from my inventory. As I used the healing skill on the glass bottle, a small light entered the bottle and soon changed into a potion. Is that what you gave Yuri? Zane's eyes widened. Yeah, I found out that I could use my power like this. So I'm not going to use that power directly in front of people, but make potions like this and use them. I talked as if to tell him not to worry, then threw him a potion. He caught it with both hands and his eyes sparkled. Keep it. You never know what might happen. It might not heal a big wound, but it'll be useful. According to the description of the healing skill, its effect increased proportionally to the skill level, so it would be useful for any kind of injury. Zane looked moved, as if his eyes turned moist. Master, why does he look so annoying? I'm so grateful that you made such a potion for me that is no different from an alchemist's top-grade potion. He looked like he was about to rush into me right away. Somehow, I didn't like that, so I lay down on my robe. Don't be shy. I closed my eyes as I heard Zane's laughter ring with his voice. The next day, Zane and I took turns keeping watch at night. I slept well whenever I fell asleep, so I didn't feel tired. We cleaned up the bonfire and got on our horses again. The forest continued all the way to Bayon. We started moving at dawn and galloped for several hours until we reached near Bayon, when the sun rose above our heads. Bayon was a small village. It had fewer buildings than Roval and fewer people. Zane and I didn't bother to stop by and headed straight for Bayon Mountain through a nearby roadside. It would have been nice to stop by the village and do some missionary work, but we didn't have time for that right now. It would be better to finish our business at Bayon Mountain as soon as possible. The huge mountain behind Bayon was so high that it couldn't be seen at a glance. It was one of the most rugged mountains in the empire, with its height and slope. Wow, how are we going to climb this? Zane asked with a nervous face as we arrived at the foot of the mountain. We have to climb it somehow. He pouted his lips as if he didn't like my answer and tied his horse to a stake. While he was doing that, I looked around for a long and sturdy wooden stick. Fortunately, I found two that I could carry. These should be useful. I handed one of the sticks to Zane. It'll be easier if you have this. He sighed deeply as he took the stick from me. I fastened my robe tightly and took off my hood. Then I started climbing. Zane followed me up to the mountain. Bayon Mountain had no trails for climbers because there were hardly any people who climbed it. The only place where I stepped on was a path where there were some footprints. But it was only a path with some footprints, not a well-maintained one. There were rocks and trees in the way, making it uncomfortable. I missed the hiking I did in my previous life. I clenched the wooden stick in my hand and shut my mouth as I climbed the mountain. About an hour after we started climbing, huff. A non-human-like breathing sound came from Zane, who was walking behind me. Ha. At least my breathing was closer to a human's breathing. My first child, are you okay? No, I feel like I'm going to die. I answered honestly to Cairo's question that held worries. Kairos had been watching me ever since I came to this world. Now that he had one more believer, he also watched over the temple in Bayer's village. So sometimes his voice didn't reach me. It had been a few hours since Kairos spoke to me. Well, if I called him in my mind, he would answer right away, but I rarely did that. You seem to have trained a lot when you were at home, but you still look tired. Yes. You would know why it's hard if you tried walking yourself. Do you want to try? The slope of Bayon Mountain became steeper as we climbed, so we had to move almost on all fours. Because of that, I felt exhausted quickly even though we didn't walk much. I don't want to do that. Ugh, how annoying. I was about to snap at Kairos when I smelled something bad. It was similar to the smell of rotting. Zane, who was walking next to me, must have felt it too as our eyes met. We quickly moved without saying anything. The slope ended and a sheer cliff came into view. Below it, there was a road connected to the one we had walked on, a flat road without a slope. There were orc and goblin corpses on it. The corpses were infested with bugs and crows, and they were clearly decayed. Ugh! Zane saw the scene and gagged. He had no problem collecting fangs from dark wolf corpses before, but he seemed to have no immunity to rotten monster corpses and their stench. Of course, I was in a similar situation. The smell was so bad that I had to cover my nose with my hand. Fortunately, the road was flat, so walking was easier, but I couldn't help frowning. The state of the corpses. It's strange. The orcs and goblins had their other parts intact, but only their heads were cut off. I knew that orcs and goblins were fighting here, but they wouldn't fight so neatly. Zane wiped his mouth and came next to me. He was obviously feeling sick. I kept some distance from him and answered, "Yeah, judging by the clean cuts, it's not the crude weapons they use, but someone who sliced them with a sword in one stroke." Because I was still covering my nose, I sounded nasal. Then Zane followed suit. "It seems like someone with considerable skill. Could it be as I suspected? Maybe it was really the apostle of Diego Faith who was here." I furrowed my brows. I didn't understand it when Zane first reported it to me, and I still don't understand it now. There was no sign of Diego Faith's apostle in Bayon Mountain in the original work. Could this be a hidden route like in Cartel Forest? Damn. I bit my lip. It wasn't certain that the apostle of Diego Faith was around here, but the skill of cutting the monsters was flawless. That meant that even if it wasn't Diego Faith's apostle, it was someone with great skill. There were also some skilled people who came here for the rumor of the treasure in Bayon Mountain, but they couldn't find the treasure. Ugh. Zane and I passed by the monster corpses and continued walking. The monster corpses were not only on that road but everywhere, so we couldn't take our hands off our noses. After walking for a while, a forked path appeared in front of us. Both roads were covered with dense trees, but there was a difference. The slope. The right road was flat without a slope, and the left road had a steep slope. It was as steep as before we entered the flat road. Zane looked at me and subtly said, "It would be better to go this way, right?" He just wanted to go to the flat road. I shook my head at him. "We're going this way." "No, why? Why do we have to go the hard way when we have a flat road?" Zane whined loudly. I ignored him and passed by him. "Stop talking and follow me." Zane, realizing that it was useless, shut his mouth, and followed me. While climbing the slope, we were lucky enough to be able to take our hands off our noses. There seemed to be no monsters around here. That was a relief. But my little bird, do you know what the treasure is here? Cairo's voice came as I walked for a long time while trying to control my rough breathing. He might have felt awkward because he was quiet, or he was really curious. But I couldn't tell him what the treasure was. I don't know. Actually, I do know. It's something I really need right now, to prepare for the incident that will happen in the continent in a few months and to survive after that. But it doesn't make sense for Revelov, who has only lived in his territory until now, to know what the inside of a treasure that even Kairos doesn't know. Usually, you have to overcome hardships to find treasures like this. So maybe there's something amazing here. When I played H-Saw, I always visited Bayon Mountain. At first, I didn't even know there was a quest in Bayon Mountain, but I found out about it as I explored various routes. There was a hidden quest in Bayon Mountain. In the original game, the only mention of Bayon Mountain was a brief conversation among the villagers, who said that goblins and orcs were fighting over a treasure there. I had seen that dialogue several times while playing the game, but I never bothered to go to Bayon Mountain because it was not on the main quest route. But one time when I was exploring a different route, I stopped by Bayon Mountain and found a hidden quest there. It was difficult, but the reward was worthy of a hidden quest. So after that, I always cleared the hidden quest at Bayon Mountain. Then let me help you. As we were walking, Kairos seemed to have finished his thoughts and suddenly appeared. Zane's eyes widened when he saw the small gray puppy. Kairos. Yes, it's me. Kairos looked more confident every time he appeared. He was so cute. What are you doing here? I came here to help my lambs find the treasure. I can smell it. He sniffed around diligently, trying to catch the scent. There's something strange about this mountain. He stood still for a while, sniffing the air. What is it? I asked innocently, pretending not to know anything. It seems like there's a very old and murky energy here. That's right. He nailed it. Really? Maybe there's a treasure there. When I acted clueless, Kairos led us to follow him. Zane and I ran after him up the slope. It's this way. It was exhausting, but when I saw where Kairos stopped, I smiled faintly. He had found the destination. This is a waterfall. Zane muttered as he looked at where Kairos stopped. Swoosh, a huge waterfall poured down with cool water. Jane marveled at the sight that appeared after climbing up high. Wow, it's beautiful. There was even a rainbow created by the giant water stream. It was truly a perfect and beautiful place. This is amazing. I didn't expect such a place in this rugged mountain. Kairos also admired it, and I can feel a strong energy behind that waterfall. Yes, Kairos was right. I looked at the waterfall for a moment and then looked around. The waterfall was below the path we came from. We had to go down about 10 meters to get near the waterfall. The waterfall in the middle of the mountain was like a synthetic scene. It was so amazing. But if it's behind the waterfall, do you know exactly where it is? I can only smell the energy but not the exact location. I'm sorry, I'm useless. That's not what I meant. Kairos looked gloomy again. I already knew where it was behind the waterfall. I had cleared this hidden quest almost dozens of times. How could I not know? Then let's find out ourselves. The path. I pretended not to know and looked around for a way down. It was more like a cliff than a path, but there was a small space where we could step on. "Master, are you going down there?" As I carefully stepped down, Zane ran up to me with a surprised look. "We have to. Kairos has kindly found us the way. We don't know the exact location yet, so let's look from below." "Aha, yes, okay." He sighed as if he didn't want to go down the rough path. I lowered my posture and grabbed the wall with my hands and stretched my feet down. Slowly, I descended on the small rock wall. "Be careful." As soon as I started going down, Kairos jumped down to the ground and shouted with a worried voice. I almost fell several times, but thanks to my hard work, I managed to arrive safely. "Whew." My heart almost dropped. "It's okay, we made it." I smiled at Kairos and looked around. There was a rocky floor like a valley in front of the waterfall, so there was no danger after that. Og. As I dusted off my hands, I heard Zane scream. He was halfway down when I last saw him, but he must have fallen to the ground. "Are you okay?" I went over to him and saw him struggling to get up from the ground. I reached out my hand and helped him up. Geez, that scared me to death. "Are you hurt anywhere?" Zane breathed heavily and checked his body. He didn't seem to have any serious injuries, but he frowned as he twisted his ankle. "My ankle hurts a little bit, but it's okay." "Why are your eyes moist then?" I stared at him for a moment and opened my inventory. This morning, before getting on the horse, I made a few more healing potions and took one out for Zane. "Master." Zane's eyes sparkled. "Drink it. Don't save it for later, drink it right now." "Ah, but it's too precious to drink for this minor injury." He looked at the potion with care, but when I glared at him silently, he finally opened the cap and drank it. "Wow, the effect is really good." His leg movement changed as soon as he drank the potion. Just like he said, it seemed that his injury was not serious. But I couldn't leave my slave in pain. "Thank you." He nodded his head at me, and while I was looking at him, Kairos had disappeared. "My boy, Kairos, when did you come back? I thought this form would be easier to watch over my lambs, but there's something you need to know." "What is it?" "You're going to go behind that waterfall, right? Then you need to prepare some antidotes. When I smelled it earlier, there were many kinds of poisons." "Ah, yes, I got it." It was a tempting offer, but I wanted to save Kairos' power for later and get a bigger favor. I already had a solution anyway. "It's okay, I can handle it. By the way, Kairos is really like a puppy." I opened my inventory right away. "Master, what are you doing? Why are you laying those things out?" I settled near a flat rock and laid out various herbs that I took out of my inventory. Zane looked at them with curiosity. "I need to prepare something." "Prepare something." I nodded briefly and moved my hands quickly. I crushed some herbs, including the mandrake head that I had used before, and extracted their juice. Then I took out 5 empty glass bottles that I always carried with me and filled them with different proportions of the herb juice. Finally, I added the sheep's milk that I had prepared beforehand, and it was done. I gave one of them to Zane. "What is this?" Instead of explaining, I grabbed a bottle and drank the liquid. Wow, I feel like throwing up. It was hard to describe how bitter it was. It was hard to swallow, but I managed to do it. It wasn't for the taste anyway. You have consumed the universal antidote. You are immune to all poisons for 1 hour. A universal antidote made with a recipe that can only be found in the latter half of the H-saw. Although it only lasts for an hour, that's enough time for this matter. Ugh, why does it taste like this? Zane, who had followed me and drank the antidote, grimaced and asked me accusingly, "What do you expect? I put all kinds of herbs in it." Ugh, Zane frowned and glared at the empty glass bottle. "By the way, master, what is this?" "It's a universal antidote." Huh, there's such an antidote. Even Zane couldn't know about this. It was something I learned from a hidden path in the latter part of the H-Saw. I saw some herbs that you use that are not for antidotes. Don't worry, it's effective. And don't go around blabbing about the recipe. It's a secret, you know. Of course, I know. Don't worry, I value my life too. That's good then. I left behind the exhilarating Zane and put the remaining herbs and universal antidotes into my inventory. Then I cleaned up the place. There were 3 antidotes left. I prepared them generously in case of any unexpected situations. But why do we need antidotes all of a sudden? Did we get poisoned without me knowing? Not yet, but we will soon. Huh, Kairos told me. Come on, follow me. I gestured to Zane and headed towards the waterfall. We passed through a path full of rocks and stones and arrived near the waterfall. The cool spray of water splashed on us. I stepped on a few rocks that were floating on the water and crossed over to the front of the waterfall. My robe was damp, but I didn't care. "Master, you're not going in there, are you?" As I stood in front of the center of the waterfall, Zane asked me in a surprised tone, "Why not? It's the only visible way, so you better follow me well." I didn't hesitate and jumped into the waterfall. Splash! I safely landed in a space behind the waterfall. I was soaked, but it couldn't be helped. Behind the giant waterfall, there was a cave that was wide enough for 3 people of immense height to enter. Ah, Zane arrived after me. He also looked like a wet rat. Ugh, I'm soaked. I wanted to dry my clothes before going in, but I didn't have much time. The effect of the universal antidote was still decreasing as time passed by. By the way, how is there a cave here? It's all thanks to Kairos that we know. Yeah, really. Kairos led us here, so it must be certain. Yes, it's all thanks to me. Actually, I was worried about what excuse to use for knowing this place, but thanks to Kairos, I accidentally came in. I was relieved. I smiled slyly and looked at the message that appeared before my eyes. "You have discovered the hidden dungeon Zine's lair. A hidden quest Zine extermination has occurred. While there are not many of them, dungeons do exist in H-Saw. This place is one of those dungeons that were shrouded in mystery, a hidden dungeon. When I played H-Saw for the first time, I couldn't find this place easily either. I found it by chance when I was running away from orcs and goblins. Hidden quest occurred. Hidden quest Zine extermination content. In the cave lives Zine, who has been alive for a long time. Zine has many poisons and its power is gradually increasing. It might soon poison the entirety of Bayon Mountain. Goal: exterminate Zine's success. Failure: do you accept? Yes/no. I immediately pressed yes. When I first found a hidden quest in H-Saw, I was so excited that I went in without any preparation and died several times. And now, I'm fully prepared. Let's go, Zane. I entered the cave with Zane. The inside was not very big, but it was enough to walk around. However, it was too dark. I took out a lantern from my inventory. Then a hand suddenly popped out from beside me and snatched the lantern away. Zane held the lantern and stared ahead. A well-trained servant indeed. A satisfied smile formed on my face. Is there really treasure in here? We can only hope so. We walked while chatting occasionally, and at some point purple mist covered our surroundings. This was Zine's poison that had been spewed out for a long time. Zine's poison was so powerful that it was no exaggeration to say that it contained all the poisons in the world. So anyone who breathed in this mist for a moment would lose their life. Ugh! Zane seemed surprised and quickly held his breath. This kind of poison would actually melt the skin from the outside and kill any living being. Not us, though. It's okay, Zane. This is why I made the antidote in advance. Oh, right, you did. Zane finally lowered his hand that was covering his nose and mouth and breathed comfortably. But Master, this amount of poison, we should have been like them too. What kind of antidote did you give me? Zane pointed to the skeletons that were rolling on the cave floor. Anyone who came in here without any preparation would melt to their bones too. Of course, it would take some time to melt the bones. Anyway, the fact that there were skeletons in this cave meant that they hadn't been here for long. Maybe they heard about the treasure and came here. They were lucky enough to get in here, though, even if they drank from the poison chalice. Well, it's a pretty good antidote. But with your skills, you could be one of the best alchemists on the continent. Wait. I gestured to Zane to be quiet. In the silence that followed, I heard someone breathing heavily. The breathing was short and rough. I followed the sound with Zane. A few meters away, there was a person sitting leaning against the wall. He's still alive. It was impossible for a normal person. What happened? My body moved before I could think. Zane followed along. Then a man in a black robe appeared. No, why is he here? The man whose face was blackened by Zine's poison was breathing hard with his eyes closed. He was Tertius. Of course, there were people who found the cave behind the waterfall. It was the same in H-Saw, however. The fact that this place existed was not widely known because everyone who entered the cave died. But Tertius was alive, although he was unconscious. This kid, he's the snake's child that I saw last time. That's right. The deadly poison that fills this cave makes it hard to survive for humans, but he seems to have some immunity to a few poisons because he's a snake's child, although it won't be long for him. Kairos was right. If he was an apostle of Diego faith, he would have immunity to several poisons. That's why he was still holding on, but his breath would soon disappear. But how did he get in here? Well, I have to ask him when he's awake. I had no choice but to take out one of the spare antidotes from my inventory. Bayon Mountain, where Khalid and his men left. Tertius searched the mountain alone. He didn't care about the time, and he wanted to solve the mystery of why he came here. He killed every monster that caught his eye as he moved. Then, he found some treasure hunters who came here after hearing rumors of a treasure in this place. Most of them were from the north. Their number was less than 10, but it quickly decreased. The treasure hunters were blinded by greed and lost their lives fighting each other or fighting monsters. When the commotion subsided, only 3 of them survived. Tertius watched them. He wondered if they would find something. Then, by chance, the treasure hunters discovered a space hidden behind the waterfall. He immediately followed them, a cave big enough for people to pass through. Inside, a poisonous mist was flowing out, and when Tertian chased after them, the treasure hunters were all dead from the poison. Those who don't know how precious life is because of money. Tertius looked at their corpses with contempt for a moment and then went inside. He could feel it clearly as he entered. There was something powerful and amazing in the lair. Although there was enough poison to kill people easily, he thought he would be fine because he was an apostle of Diego faith and had immunity to some poisons. But as he went deeper inside, his body became harder to move. He didn't realize that there was an unknown poison mixed in the air. Cough. When Tertius realized it, it was too late. He grabbed his throat and fell to the floor. He couldn't even open his mouth to scream in pain. It was hard to breathe, his throat burned, and he felt his organs twisting. Tertius endured the agony with difficulty and slowly closed his eyes, which were blurred by vision. Am I going to die like this because of these poisons? Will I never see Ivan again? He lost consciousness in an instant. When he was only feeling pain in the endless darkness, some liquid flowed into his mouth. Will it work if you give it to him when he's half dead? Maybe. He swallowed the liquid unknowingly and heard a familiar voice in his ear. Gradually, his consciousness became clearer from the darkness. Huh. His eyes moved just now. It seems to work. That's right. When he barely lifted his eyelids, which felt like they weighed a ton, Tertius found Leviathan squatting in front of him. When I gave him the antidote diligently, Tertius finally opened his eyes. I smiled as I saw his eyes focus slowly. The universal antidote is the best in this world. It could save him even in such a poisoned state. Of course, since Tertius didn't drink the antidote before entering like me and Zane, he had to recover his damaged organs, so it would take some time for him to return to normal. The antidote only detoxifies the poison, not heals it. But I couldn't use healing potions recklessly either. I only have about 3 healing potions left that I made. I don't have much spare energy either, and I don't have any obligation to take care of him. He's strong enough to recover on his own by the time the antidote wears off. By the way, why is he here? It turned out that Zane was right about an apostle of Diego faith being on Bayon Mountain. But I didn't expect Tertius to be here, let alone in this hidden dungeon. I looked at Tertius blankly and then turned my gaze to Zane. He seemed to not know that Tertius was an apostle of Diego faith. Zane hated Diego faith so much that he despised it. So, there was no good reason to tell him Tertius' identity right now. Anyway, Tertius was wearing a black robe, and since the emblem of Diego faith was not visible inside, he seemed to be wearing casual clothes instead of apostle clothes. That's good. But what if Tertius pretends to know me? You are Leviathan. Tertius stared at me with his eyes open and called me. Long time no see. I reached out to him with a businesslike smile. He grabbed my hand and got up. He seemed to be wobbly, probably because he was still not in good shape. Tertius staggered and leaned against the wall. Then Zane came to my side and whispered, "Did you know him?" "Well, a little bit. I knew him very well, but I didn't bother to explain." "Thank you." Tertius, who was breathing heavily and leaning against the wall, spoke to me in a small voice that barely reached my ears. "It's okay. I didn't treat you to get a thank you, but why are you here?" Tertius didn't answer, even though it was a question from the one who saved his life. What a rude guy. "What about you? Why are you here?" He didn't answer but asked me instead. What a cheeky guy, just because. You didn't answer either, so why should I? Then there was silence in the cave. I didn't care, but Zane didn't seem to like it. He looked between me and Tertius and cleared his throat. He reached out to Tertius. I'm Zane. Zane also smiled like me and asked Tertius for a handshake. But Tertius turned his head away and ignored him. Zane's eyebrows twitched. You snake bastard. How dare you ignore my child's greeting? Kairos was also angry at Tertius' rude attitude. Don't mind him, he's always like that. I whispered softly to Zane. His expression relaxed slightly. We couldn't stay here forever, so I slowly moved my feet. Zane immediately followed me. But why is he following me? Before I knew it, Zane was on my right side and Tertius was on my left. They were walking side by side with me. What did they want? Why are you following me? I asked Tertius, who looked at me impassively without any expression. My destination is inside here. So he came here to look for the treasure too. Diego Faith in the original novel didn't care about the treasure. It must be because of the damn hidden route. Wow, you must have a very important mission. You're going there right after you regained consciousness from almost dying. And you don't even know what's in there, especially when the poison mist is getting thicker. What about you? Aren't you going to a place where you don't know what's in there? Or do you know what's inside here? Well, isn't that none of your business? He had already promised not to kill me, so I answered him casually, feeling somewhat defiant. Then I felt a sharp gaze from the side. It was Zane. What? Why do you seem so friendly with him? Zane whispered to me, sticking close to me. I shook my head. Not at all. We're not friends at all. But he doesn't talk to you politely. He's just a rude rider. But hey, everyone respects you when they know you're the leader of the Kairos faith. He knows that too. Really? I nodded and Zane tilted his head and muttered to himself, what kind of relationship is that? I wondered how Zane felt that Tertius and I were close. I didn't understand it either. Leviathan. As I glared at Zane, I heard Tertius' soft voice. I turned my head to him, and he raised one eyebrow. What? Am I rude? Oh no, did he hear everything I said? I was a bit flustered. It sounded like I insulted him openly, but he had promised not to kill me, so, a little bit. I answered honestly. He was not in good shape anyway. Maybe I could fend him off if he attacked. I see. Fortunately, Tertius seemed to accept it humbly. Phew. I almost got hurt somewhere. Come to think of it, he only swore not to kill me, but not to hurt me. That means he could injure me as long as he didn't kill me. No, I should be careful with my words. He looked calm now, but he might change his mind since he joined Diego Faith, unlike in the original novel. I should be cautious. By the way, I couldn't believe I had such thoughts about him. In the original novel, Tertius was like a bright sunshine. As I continued walking with these thoughts in mind, I felt Tertius breathing getting rougher next to me. He must be recovering from the poison slowly, but his body was not fully healed yet, and he was still inhaling the poison mist constantly. Lean on me. I had no choice but to support Tertius, so I approached him, but he stepped back. I'm fine. He said that, but I could clearly see him limping on one leg. If you don't want to fall, lean on me. I grabbed his arm and pulled him closer. He reluctantly leaned on me with his sturdy body that was a head taller than mine. But why was he so heavy? I offered to support him, so I couldn't let go of him now. But my pace slowed down too. Damn, I couldn't say that I couldn't support him anymore. That's when it happened. Tertius let out a sigh mixed with annoyance, and then his weight became lighter. He must have noticed that I was also struggling. It wasn't because I was weak. Well, maybe a little bit, but it was mostly because his body was like an iron. Anyway, I stopped supporting him and opened my inventory to get my mace out. SSSSH, the scorpion started crawling quickly towards us. Eek! Zane let out a terrified scream at the same time. Between the light of the torches, something appeared in front of us. It was a red scorpion as big as a person. What are you so scared of? No, it's a bug, a giant bug. I hate bugs. Oh, okay. I wasn't surprised because I knew this place was a scorpion cave, but if I didn't have any information like Zane, I might have been scared too. Anyway, I took out my mace and got ready to fight. Swoosh thud. But before I could react, Zane shot an arrow. Fear really made people move faster. And he must have put a lot of power into the arrow because I could clearly see the object flying through the air. When did he get so strong? I wasn't sure if he had actually become stronger or if he had just learned to use his power more skillfully. Either way, the arrow pierced through the head of the creature, and it melted away with a hiss, spilling green liquid. Ugh, disgusting. Zane looked at the creature he had caught and shuddered. He was more afraid of it than I was. I stared at him for a moment, then reached out to help Tertius. But Tertius' eyes had changed. He was staring blankly at Jane. What's wrong with him? That power. As I was puzzled by Tertius' gaze, he opened his mouth. Is that the power of Kairos? Then his eyes shifted from Zane to me. I nodded and answered, yes, that's right. Tertius' eyebrows furrowed. Why is he acting like that? Are you hurt? I asked him, wondering if he was out of his mind. He didn't answer. His eyes looked confused. Was it because of the poison? I don't want to waste it on him, but I have no choice. I opened my inventory and took out one of the few healing potions I had left. Drink this. It will make you feel better. My healing skill had improved as I leveled up, and I could even heal the mind, so I hoped it would help him recover. Zane looked at me enviously. What is this? Think of it as tea. I didn't want to tell him the truth, so I answered vaguely. Tertius took the potion from me and stared at it for a while before gulping it down. This should be fine, that's what I thought. Gah! Tertius grabbed his head and groaned in pain. Tertius, what the hell is going on? I was startled and approached him. He only moaned. Ugh, he didn't vomit blood or anything, but he looked like he was suffering from a headache. No, master, did you just try to kill him? Zane asked me with a shocked look. No, that's not it. I held Tertius' shoulder, but his huge body slumped down. He had lost consciousness. What the hell? He's still alive, fortunately. Zane muttered as he put his finger under Tertius's nose. That's a relief. A relief, but what the hell? I couldn't understand it no matter how hard I thought. I had given him a healing potion. Even if Tertius had the power of Diego, healing wouldn't harm him. Even if it was an opposing power. I was sure I gave him a proper healing potion. Why did I feel like I had just attempted to assassinate him, as Zane said? My child, it's not your fault. Why did Kairos say that? The healing power you have now is not strong enough to hurt him. Oh, so if my power becomes stronger, I might be able to hurt him. No, there was no such setting in the original work. Was this because of the hidden route? Kairos, sir. Then you mean it's not my fault anyway? Yes. I don't know why either, but it's not your fault. Basically, healing is a power that encompasses all living things. no matter if they are snakes, children, or monsters. Of course, if your power becomes stronger, you can use it for attacking as well. Not now. So it was the same as the knowledge of Wusabiup that I knew, except that the healing skill that was originally used only for healing could be used like other offensive divine skills if enhanced. What are you going to do? Are you going to leave him here? As I sighed in relief that it wasn't my fault, Zane asked me. I can't do that. There are monsters here. Well, Tertius wouldn't die even if I left him here, but I felt like I had tried to kill him, so I decided to take him with me. I nodded at Zane. I couldn't carry Tertius by myself since he was unconscious. Zane sighed deeply and came over. Zane and I each hooked one of Tertius' arms over our shoulders and dragged him along. We had to hurry since we didn't have much time left for the antidote. I don't know why Tertius collapsed, but we have a long way to go. Zane and I silently entered the cave. We had nothing to say because of Tertius' weight. How long did we walk? Rustle, 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 rustle. At some point, we were surrounded by creatures the size of humans that appeared from all sides. There were about 10 of them. Ugh, I hate this. Zane closed his eyes tightly as if he couldn't stand to look at them. I agreed with him. You can't bear to look at them. Kairos seemed disgusted too. I handed Tertius over to Zane. Close your eyes. Zane didn't want to see them either, so I had to move. After hearing his small reply, I took out my divine weapon club. The reason why this hidden dungeon was so difficult was because of the poison. The only thing that could withstand the poison of the creatures was the universal antidote that I had made. This creature cave was a hidden dungeon that appeared in the early and mid-game, but the universal antidote that was needed was only available in the late game after getting the recipe. So this hidden dungeon was a place that only those who had played the game several times could clear. I wondered how many people had cleared this damn game besides me. Anyway, the point was, the monsters in front of me were useless without poison. They were very easy. I started swinging my club at the creatures. As I walked and killed the creatures every time I met them, I soon had only about 10 minutes left for the antidote effect. Fortunately, we arrived at the boss room in time. The cave itself was not very complicated, so we could reach the boss room if we followed the path. The boss room of the creature cave was a huge hollow. Inside, there was a giant creature curled up like a snake, sleeping. Judging by the energy I felt, that creature must have been the source of the thick and powerful aura I sensed. Yes, it seems so. We dragged Tertius into the hollow, moving as quietly as possible. Zane especially covered his mouth with his hand, as if he was afraid of screaming. His eyes were wide with fear. It was understandable. The creatures we had seen so far were nothing compared to this one. The boss monster, a giant creature, was impressive in size. Even though it was coiled up, it was still 3 times bigger than us. I didn't realize it in the game, but in reality, it's like a 1,000-year-old creature. I turned my gaze away from the creature and saw Zane's pupils shaking like an earthquake. His eyes seemed to say, "How about we run away before it wakes up?" I shook my head and gestured with my hand. "We'll get a treasure if we kill it." "Ugh, I really don't want to." "Then you wait behind while I do it." After a brief conversation, Zane nodded. When the negotiation was over, he dragged the unconscious Tertius back. When they were far enough away, a shadow fell over my head. I quickly turned around and saw the giant creature looking down at me. Wow! I couldn't help but open my mouth wide. It had only lifted half of its body, but it looked more than 10 meters tall. Could I handle it? Hang in there, my child. I couldn't back down now. With Cairo's fervent encouragement, I summoned my divine weapon club. At that moment, the creature's tail moved with a sound that cut through the wind. I shivered at the sight of its many legs wriggling, and at the end of its tail there was a sharp sting like a scorpion's, which I had to be especially careful of. The creature's tail tip spewed out deadly poison. The reason why I had to be careful, even though I had taken the universal antidote, was the poison flowing from its tail was acidic enough to melt the ground. No matter how much the antidote neutralized the poison, human skin would melt under such strong acidity. The acid that reminded me of hydrochloric acid had to be avoided at all costs. My child. I barely dodged the poison and rolled on the ground. So I grabbed my club and quickly got up. That was close, but I could handle this speed. The tail flew at me again with greater speed. It seemed to have figured out my move, but I was faster. I swung my divine weapon club at the creature's head without hesitation. The giant creature screamed and spewed out poison from its tail with a thud. That wasn't all. The giant creature's body shook violently. Damn it! I'll get hit by the poison at this rate. I threw myself to the ground to avoid the poison. Unfortunately, the creature shook its body at that moment and I couldn't control my direction. Tang. I felt a strong shock throughout my body and the floor shook. I had hit the wall. My child, are you okay? Thankfully, I didn't lose consciousness because I covered my head as I fell. My body hurt, but nothing was broken. It was lucky that I learned how to fall properly from Fanatic. I used my healing skill on myself and got up. Coon. A loud noise came from somewhere. The creature that had been spraying poison everywhere finally fell to the ground. Ha ha! I was exhausted. I got up from the rubble of the collapsed wall and saw Jane running towards me with a worried look. Master, are you okay? I saw Tertius lying on the ground as Zane ran towards me. Luckily, he didn't fall on top of the poison. Yeah, I'm fine. This was easy for a hidden dungeon, so I only got hurt when I fell, and even that was healed by my healing skill. Hidden quest creature extermination cleared. Hidden quest reward will be given. The notification popped up when the creature was completely dead. Right after that, the ground shook once more. A small space appeared on the wall behind the creature. That was the reward for the hidden quest. I left the hidden dungeon with Zane and immediately descended the mountain. After that, we rode horses for several days. We took breaks in between and finally returned to Holden territory. It was already late at night when we arrived at Lober. You've worked hard, Zane. Yes, I would appreciate it if you let me rest for a few days. I said goodbye to Zane in the back alley and returned to the temple. Since it was late, there were hardly any believers in the temple. As I headed to the leader's office, avoiding the few believers' eyes, the children ran up to me. Leader, you're back. Leader, you've worked hard. Welcome back. As I received the children's welcome, I sat down on the sofa as if collapsing. At the same time, a white light appeared and Kairos materialized as a puppy. You've worked hard, my child. The puppy Kairos floating in the air tapped my forehead with his small paw. What are you talking about? I felt healed by his small gesture. I've sorted out the gold coins and jewels from before in the warehouse. Good job, Alphi, Chester, and Sasha too. Oh, nothing happened while I was gone, right? Yes, yes, don't worry. Well, that's good. I stroked each of the children's heads once and then entered the bedroom. I wanted to spend more time with the children, but I was too exhausted. My body was sore from riding a horse for a long time. Even though I healed myself with divine power from time to time, I still had muscle pain. I might have died if I hadn't healed. That was my last memory. When I opened my eyes again, warm sunlight was coming in through the window. Wow, I must have passed out, but I felt better after sleeping. I still had some mild muscle pain, but I was going to rest for a while anyway. I got up lazily and went to the leader's office. The children had already left, and there was a simple meal on the table. Enjoy your meal, leader. Chester, ever since I stayed at the temple, the children took turns preparing meals for me. Today's duty was Chester's. I devoured Chester's toast and fruit juice in no time and sat comfortably on the sofa. Then I told the children not to come to the leader's office for a while and opened my inventory. It's time to absorb the core. Cairo's voice didn't reach me, so he must have been playing with the children since yesterday. That was better. I took out the 1,000-year-old core of the giant worm. Seeing the core that filled my hand, a smile came to my face. But I can't eat it right away. I put down the core on the table and scanned my inventory again. The 1,000-year-old core of the giant worm was not something that could be absorbed right away. It was big in size and basically inside a giant worm, so eating it without any preparation could kill me. It was no different from being soaked in all kinds of poison that the giant worm spewed out. First of all, I took out one of the few universal antidotes left. The price of one universal antidote was about as much as a mansion, but it was nothing compared to the value of the core. That's why I could swallow it without hesitation. Then I grabbed the core of the giant worm. The black core looked similar to black arc. It was easy to tell apart because of the poison that was swirling around it. I exhaled briefly and put the core to my mouth. It looked like it wouldn't fit in one bite because it was fist-sized, but it wasn't. The core of the giant worm shrank to bite-sized as soon as it touched my lips. I closed my eyes tightly and put it in my mouth at once. Gulp. Even though it had shrunk, it felt like swallowing a candy whole. It was hard, but I forced it down and felt it go into my body. As soon as I did, ugh, I groaned involuntarily. My esophagus burned and I felt like my intestines were melting. In the original work, consuming the core of a zine caused a debuff called eroded poison. This debuff lasted for about 50 minutes and had a much stronger toxicity than when I entered the zine cave. Thanks to the universal antidote I ate, I only felt a little pain, and my body was holding on. The problem was that I had to endure this pain for about an hour. It hurts more than I thought. The pain was stronger than I had lightly thought, and I clenched my fists and bit my lips. The pain got stronger as time passed. The core of the zine was the crystallization of the poison that the zine had nurtured for 1,000 years. It was like eating 1,000 years of accumulated poison at once. I clenched my teeth so hard that blood flowed from my lips. I endured the pain and tried to think of something else. Why can I eat the core after taking the antidote? I had wondered that before. Wouldn't the effect of the core disappear if I ate it after taking the universal antidote, which was no different from the crystallization of poison? But it didn't take long for that question to be resolved. The effect of the core was poison immunity and curse immunity. In other words, it was an item that gave beneficial effects to the user. But for it to fully work, the poison on the surface had to be gone. That's why I had to take the universal antidote and eat the core to unleash its true power. Ugh! How much time had passed? I clenched my teeth and endured it until the pain subsided. Just a little more, a little more. Finally, when all the pain was gone from my body, I opened my eyes. As soon as I did, a message appeared in front of me. The 1,000-year-old Zine's core has been perfectly absorbed. You gain permanent immunity to all curses and poisons. Only then did I relax my body and smile. Roval, no different from usual. A young man was looking at himself in the mirror in his room. "Max, what are you doing?" Even though his friend Tom came in, Max couldn't take his eyes off the mirror. "Max." Tom approached him and Max turned his gaze to him. "Tom, it might be just me, but—" Max looked at Tom carefully and said, "Don't you think my skin got better?" "What?" Tom narrowed his eyes. "No, look closely." Then Max pushed his face forward. Tom was annoyed by his friend's behavior but decided to listen to him. Looking closely, he saw that his complexion was clearer than usual. "Maybe." "Right. I was so annoyed by the acne on my face until last night, but when I woke up it was all gone." "You must have taken good care of it." "Really?" Max tilted his head. Tom chuckled and turned his eyes to the mirror. Then he suddenly noticed his own face and his eyes widened slightly. "I feel like my skin got better too. It must be a mistake." Tom thought so. When I finished my morning training and arrived at the master's office, a message window popped up out of nowhere. "The number of Cairo's followers has exceeded 1,000. Oh, finally. It had only been a few days since I returned from Bayon Mountain, but the number of followers had increased to 1,000 on its own. But that wasn't all the message window said. You acquire the skill Follower of Beauty. Huh, what kind of skill is this? Is it for me? Since it had a similar name to God of Beauty, which I already had, I opened the skill window and saw the information. Follower of Beauty, passive grade, mythical description, a global buff for followers of Kairos, the God of Beauty. The effect increases as the number of Kairos followers increases. Current total number of followers, 1,000. Current effect, your skin improves. Is this for real? There's such a buff. It was a global buff for followers that wasn't even in Wusabiup. And the effect increased as the number of followers increased. If the number of followers increased later, could I advertise with the phrase "believe in Kairos and become beautiful"? No, that would make me look like a cult. It would be better to let it spread quietly rather than openly advertise it. But I was happy that I got a new skill. "Master, where have you been?" I entered the master's office with a smile and saw Zane there. He must have brought the herbs I asked him for before. "Morning exercise, huh?" I said hello to Zane as I sat down across from him. Then his skin caught my eye. Could it be because of the follower of beauty skill? He looked like his skin had improved since I last saw him. My skin had always been flawless thanks to my god of beauty passive, so I didn't notice any change. But Zane's complexion seemed slightly clearer than before. How fascinating. I found myself staring at him, and he gave me a wary look. Master, why are you looking at me like that? It's nothing. It's just that your skin looks better somehow. Does it? Zane rubbed his cheek and cocked his head. He didn't seem to feel any difference. Well, he was used to changing his sleep cycle every day. He wasn't the only one whose change I observed. After getting the herbs from Zane, I changed into my master's robe and put on my glasses. Then I walked around the temple grounds. I exchanged greetings with the followers and bumped into Cyril. Master, good day. Cyril's skin also looked noticeably better. The effect might vary from person to person, but Zane and Cyril were obvious examples. Master, why are you staring at me? Do I have something on my face? No, brother Cyril. It was truly amazing. What is it, my child? I think. The follower's skin has improved a bit. Oh, really? Well, I am the god of beauty after all. As my power grows stronger, so does their beauty. I understood how this skill came to be when I heard Kairos's smug voice. It was a wonderful effect indeed. Seeing it with my own eyes made me more eager. Oh, how I wish to gain more followers with this. The main hall of the Diego Church. The first apostle's chamber. Tertius opened the door and stepped inside quietly. The chamber was shrouded in darkness that made it impossible to see anything. As Tertius walked a few steps forward, the door behind him closed on its own. He stopped at the center of the chamber, and a shadowy figure emerged from the dark. The one who sat on the throne alone hid his entire appearance under a black robe, even in the darkness. Tertius gazed at him silently. The first apostle of the Diego Church. He was the one who had the most contact with Diego within the church. He had heard that he was personally chosen by Diego when he first descended to this land. A long silence passed between them. The one who broke it was the first apostle. I hear that a new religion has emerged in a place called Roval in the Holden territory.